Lewis Hamilton has just secured the most lucrative sponsorship deal in the history of Formula One. Stay until the end to see Leclerc's furious reaction and the jaw-dropping amount of money Hamilton is set to earn from this sponsorship. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Lewis Hamilton has just executed what can only be described as a paradigm-shifting maneuver, a seismic disruption that has fractured the traditional boundaries of sponsorship in motorsport and rewritten the rules of driver autonomy and branding in Formula One. This isn't merely a lucrative endorsement or a clever marketing arrangement designed to pad a portfolio. It is a transformative moment, the kind that redraws lines of influence and forces the entire paddock to re-evaluate the distribution of power within the sport. The entity at the center of this deal is Perplexity, a fast-ascending artificial intelligence powerhouse headquartered in the United States, currently appraised at an eye-watering valuation just shy of $9 billion. But it's not the dollar amount that has the grid whispering. It's who Perplexity chose, and more importantly, how they chose to align. The partnership doesn't adhere to any of the conventional blueprints. This isn't a slap-on logo stitched to the side of a car, nor a glossy campaign tied to a team's success. There are no vague promotional tie-ins to constructor standings or backroom deals with team principals. This isn't about Ferrari. It isn't about the Scuderia's future. It's not about the color red or heritage or chassis evolution. This is about Hamilton, and only Hamilton. An individual deal that bypasses the team structure entirely, positioning him as a standalone commercial and cultural juggernaut, completely independent of his machinery, his engineers, or even his championship prospects. For the first time in modern Formula One history, a tech giant of such magnitude has opted to attach itself directly to a driver's name, not a team's brand. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. It's a strategic earthquake whose aftershocks are already unsettling the political and commercial equilibrium of the sport. Within the walls of Maranello, the reaction hasn't just been surprise. It's been unease. Ferrari, with all its storied legacy and gravitational pull, is witnessing a shift in leverage it hasn't had to face before. A shift where the driver they believed they had integrated into their brand identity is now carving out his own path, independent, unsanctioned, and entirely self-authored. Perplexity's choice to back Hamilton the individual over Ferrari, the institution, is not a minor detail. It's a deliberate signal that in the age of driver branding, personal reach, and global resonance, the balance of influence has changed, and it's changed irreversibly. For Hamilton, the move cements something he has been building meticulously over the past decade. This isn't the product of luck or opportunistic timing. This is the consequence of years spent cultivating a cross-industry presence that reaches far beyond pit walls and paddock hospitality suites. He's no longer a mere participant in Formula One, he's transcended the cockpit. He is now a global icon whose platform extends into tech, fashion, music, environmental activism, social justice, and futurism. He is a storyteller, a campaigner, an entrepreneur, and increasingly, a force capable of attracting the world's most valuable and disruptive companies not to a team, but to himself. The fact that Perplexity, a cutting-edge AI company vying to disrupt the dominance of legacy tech titans, chose to invest in a driver rather than a team speaks volumes about where both parties see the future heading. This is not an F1 sponsorship in the traditional sense. This is brand integration into Hamilton's personal universe, a universe that spans social media empires, global speaking engagements, collaborative ventures in sustainability, and media production, all under the umbrella of an individual who has mastered the art of living beyond the grid. It also signals a new chapter in driver empowerment. For decades, Formula One has operated on a team-first mentality. Drivers were assets, valuable, talented, even iconic, but still assets within the larger enterprise of a racing organization. Sponsorships were negotiated by marketing departments. Branding opportunities filtered through PR channels. Drivers wore logos as representatives, not stakeholders. But what Hamilton has now demonstrated is that a driver with sufficient vision, scale, and cultural weight can reverse that relationship. He is no longer an extension of Ferrari. He is his own institution, and companies like Perplexity see more long-term ROI in backing the man than the machine. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. This decision also forces Ferrari into a difficult position. While publicly they will endorse the partnership, internally, the discomfort is real. Hamilton's status as a Ferrari driver is no longer the final word in his public identity. He is no longer a component of their image. He is building one of his own, running parallel, sometimes in conflict, and entirely immune to internal brand strategy. That's not just unusual, it's unprecedented. Ferrari, for all its heritage, is now cohabiting space with a brand that didn't originate in Maranello but lives inside the very same garage, with a louder voice, a faster growth curve, and a direct line to global tech narratives. That creates tension. That creates risk. And that changes how future contracts will be written. And the timing, just days before the Canadian Grand Prix, was no accident. In fact, it was the masterstroke. Announcing the partnership right before one of the season's most commercially saturated race weekends ensured maximum visibility, amplified intrigue, and injected an off-track narrative that instantly became more compelling than most qualifying strategies. The cameras, the headlines, the digital chatter, all redirected. Not toward the team standings. Not toward the development race. But toward a driver who has managed to become the most newsworthy figure on the grid without even turning a wheel that weekend. The implications don't stop with Hamilton. This move sets a precedent, a beacon for other drivers to pursue independence in a sport that has historically discouraged it. Younger talents are watching. Their managers are taking notes. Their agents are updating pitch decks. If Hamilton can attract a tech giant as formidable as Perplexity without a team intermediary, who's to say someone like Norris, Leclerc, or Russell won't follow suit in the next few years? We are witnessing the slow erosion of the team-dominant sponsorship era. This is the dawn of the driver-as-platform model, and Hamilton has just fired the first shot. The magnitude of this shift cannot be overstated. It redefines relationships. It alters commercial dynamics. It demands that teams begin treating drivers not just as athletes but as partners, influencers, co-creators. It forces the FIA to contemplate how driver-led branding could influence race weekend coverage, broadcast allocations, and media control. It challenges Liberty Media to rethink how Formula One content is distributed and monetized. And it sends a very loud, very unambiguous message to every entity in the ecosystem. If you want global cultural relevance, don't just look to teams. Look to the drivers who define the sport's modern identity. Lewis Hamilton hasn't just secured a sponsorship. He's architected a revolution. And Formula One will never be the same again. Ryan Fouty, Vice President of Business at Perplexity, didn't mince words when describing the exhaustive process his team undertook before arriving at what is now being considered one of the boldest commercial alignments in recent Formula One history. 4 months, Perplexity's executive leadership, marketing teams, and data analysts held a series of strategic and exploratory dialogues with several major Formula One teams. Their internal evaluation stretched across the paddock, from a heritage-rich environment of Aston Martin to the ambitious rebuild underway at Williams to the relentless performance engine that is Red Bull Racing. Each presented compelling narratives, exciting projections, and sophisticated partnership decks. But in every case, something fundamental was missing. It wasn't a lack of exposure or innovation or reach. It was deeper than that. It was about identity. What Perplexity wanted wasn't simply sticker placement or B2B networking behind the hospitality curtain. They weren't looking to be background noise on a race suit. They wanted a face, a voice, a representation of the future they were building. Fast, intelligent, multidimensional, and boundary-breaking. And across all those conversations, one name kept surfacing, not just inside their boardroom but in the broader cultural consciousness: Lewis Hamilton. For Fouty and his colleagues, Hamilton didn't merely represent performance, he represented trajectory. A man whose very career path mirrored the ethos of a tech company forged in the crucible of speed and complexity. He wasn't a spokesperson. He wasn't a brand ambassador. He was alignment. Innovation personified. A living, evolving intersection of sport, science, culture, and global influence. Where others offered access, Hamilton offered synthesis. He was the platform, the message, the distribution channel, the cultural heartbeat. The partnership between Hamilton and Perplexity is more than a commercial agreement. It's a recalibration of the way sponsorship works in Formula One. Traditionally, team-led deals dominate the landscape. Logos appear on liveries, branding spreads across hospitality zones, product placement is baked into driver appearances and race day interviews. The message is centralized through the team. But this isn't that. This is a model designed not around the car, but around the individual. Around Hamilton himself. And that changes everything. The visible aspects of the partnership are modest by design. The Perplexity logo will be displayed discreetly, on the helmet, in curated digital content, across selected social media activations. But those visible markers are only the tip of a vastly more ambitious collaboration. Behind closed doors, within both Perplexity's innovation labs and Hamilton's expanding commercial universe, a new architecture is being constructed, one that operates independently of Ferrari's brand machinery. Because for the first time in Ferrari's long and storied history, a driver is asserting influence outside the team's traditional infrastructure. Hamilton isn't merely driving for the Scuderia. He's running a parallel enterprise that not only coexists with Ferrari, but in some subtle ways, overshadows it. This dynamic represents a seismic shift. Ferrari, since its earliest days, has been built on a deeply embedded hierarchy. The car is the hero. The team is the narrative. The driver is the vessel. Even legends like Schumacher, who brought titles and glory in waves, were ultimately framed as contributors to the greater myth of the prancing horse. The red comes first. Always. That's how it's always been. The machine swallows the man. But Hamilton isn't playing by those rules. Not now. Not in this era. Because Lewis Hamilton is not just a racing driver. He is a corporation. A media engine. A cultural ambassador. A strategic thinker. He has built a global business around his name and values, complete with its own sponsorship pipeline, content production platforms, fashion initiatives, philanthropic arms, and soon, if insider chatter is to be believed, even AI and environmental tech ventures. His name no longer depends on Ferraris. If anything, Ferrari now finds itself sharing the stage with someone who operates on a higher commercial plane, and who commands an audience that stretches far beyond the Formula One demographic. And the most compelling part? None of this is performative. Hamilton's influence isn't derived from flash or vanity metrics. It's rooted in substance. The Perplexity partnership, for example, isn't just a marketing move. It's a strategic alignment between a driver obsessed with pushing human potential and a company attempting to redefine how information is accessed and processed at speed. Both are trying to outthink the system. Both are trying to move faster than convention allows. Their missions aren't merely aligned, they're entangled. That entanglement creates new tensions inside Ferrari, subtle, unspoken, but undeniably real. When a driver becomes a brand ecosystem, it changes the internal math. It alters the gravitational pull inside a team. Hamilton doesn't need Ferrari for his platform to function. That autonomy gives him a kind of freedom most drivers have never enjoyed within the red walls of Maranello. It changes how meetings are held, how messaging is approved, how leverage is applied. Because Hamilton doesn't require Ferrari's approval to launch a campaign, to influence narratives, or to initiate global partnerships. He exists in his own orbit, and that orbit now includes Perplexity, a partner that shares his velocity. For Ferrari, the implications are enormous. On one hand, they've gained a driver who elevates the team's visibility in spaces that Formula One has long struggled to enter: mainstream tech, fashion, social impact, Gen Z culture. But on the other hand, they've inherited a force that cannot be molded. Hamilton doesn't bend. He adapts. He evolves. He leads. And that leadership isn't internal, it's external, autonomous, and highly visible. It's a new kind of power, one that challenges the traditional model where drivers are assets and teams are empires. Hamilton, through this deal, has quietly rewritten the contract of what it means to be a Ferrari driver. He is part of the team, but not beholden to it. He contributes to the myth, but he also competes with it. He respects the legacy, but he's building one of his own, concurrent, global, and future-facing. And while it may not affect lap times directly, it influences everything else: who holds sway in media narratives, who dictates messaging in moments of controversy, who retains public sympathy when performance falters. The paddock is watching. Rivals are already reconsidering their commercial strategies. Young drivers especially are taking notes, seeing in Hamilton not just a career path, but a blueprint for independence in a sport that has historically demanded conformity. And within Ferrari, there are those who quietly admire what he's doing, even as they try to figure out how to manage it. Because what Hamilton has created isn't just a sponsorship deal. It's a model. One where the driver is no longer just a performer, but a partner, a brand, a force multiplier. And in the context of Ferrari, where control has always been the currency, that is not just disruptive. It is revolutionary. For Charles Leclerc, a driver who has long embodied the emotional and symbolic heart of Ferrari, The shifting dynamics within the team in 2025 are not just strategic or competitive, they're existential. Since his promotion to the Scuderia, Leclerc has been everything Ferrari has historically asked for: committed, patient, immensely talented, emotionally connected to the brand, and willing to carry the burden of expectation even in seasons where the machinery failed him. He's driven through periods of chaos, through political reshuffles, through unfulfilled promises of technical progress, and has managed to remain the consistent face of hope for the Tifosi. Every time a new chassis underdelivered, every time a race was lost in the pit lane or in a questionable strategy call, Leclerc stayed. He put his head down. He drove hard. He believed. And through all of that, he earned not just admiration, but a kind of spiritual ownership of Ferrari's present and its presumed future. But everything is changing now, and it's changing fast. The arrival of Lewis Hamilton, a seismic presence both on and off the grid, has fundamentally altered the center of gravity within the team, and perhaps within Formula One as a whole. Hamilton isn't just a new teammate. He's a global brand. He's a media machine. He's a political force, a fashion icon, a business mind, a storyteller, a symbol, a movement. Leclerc, for all his raw speed and deep connection to the Ferrari mythos, has never had to compete with that kind of gravity. Until now, he was the undisputed cornerstone, the focal point. Now he's sharing a garage with someone who doesn't just exist within the F1 universe, but who bends the narrative of the sport itself around him, regardless of grid position. The effect of this isn't being articulated directly. There are no quotes or obvious rivalries brewing in front of the cameras, yet. But the change is already visible, if you know where to look. It's in the tension between answers during press conferences. It's in the subtle shifts in posture during media days. It's in how team statements are worded, in which driver the camera lingers on longer, in how interviewers frame their questions. It's in who gets invited to global tech summits, who walks the Fashion Week red carpets, who gets name-dropped by CEOs and AI think tanks. Hamilton's impact has transcended the sport, and that cultural dominance is bleeding into the internal dynamics of Ferrari in ways the team has never had to manage before. Leclerc may still be producing sharper qualifying laps. His raw pace remains unquestioned. He might even be leading Hamilton in the championship standings. But none of that is insulating him from the reality that his influence inside the team, his gravitational pull, has been diluted. And not because he's gotten slower, or less committed, or less charismatic, but because the ecosystem around him has changed. Hamilton brings with him a global spotlight so blinding that traditional metrics of performance, pole positions, lap times, podiums, are no longer the only currencies that matter. Sponsors don't just want a winner. They want a narrative. They want reach. They want cultural capital. And Hamilton delivers that at an industrial scale. This shift is placing Ferrari in uncharted waters. Historically, the Scuderia has always preferred a singular star. The structure of the team, the branding, the culture, it's designed to orbit around one figure at a time. When Michael Schumacher led the team, there was no doubt where the power rested. Even during the Alonso years, and more recently the Vettel era, Ferrari managed to centralize attention and authority around one voice, one vision. Now, for the first time in the modern era, Ferrari is forced to balance two forces of nature, one built on performance and emotional legacy, the other on transcendent global identity. And the strain is showing. Behind the scenes, the marketing department is grappling with split priorities. Communication staff are walking tightropes, balancing loyalty to Leclerc, the faithful son of Maranello, with the irresistible draw of Hamilton's global engagement engine. Engineering teams, already stretched by the pressure of delivering a title-contending car, are now tasked with managing two top-tier drivers whose styles, demands, and internal expectations couldn't be more different. One wants to keep the team close to its roots, grounded in tradition and Italian excellence. The other wants innovation, boldness, speed, in every sense of the word. What makes this dynamic even more volatile is that no one is overtly saying anything. There are no public confrontations. No finger-pointing. Leclerc hasn't lashed out. He hasn't criticized Hamilton. In fact, on the surface, everything appears cordial. But anyone who's been in Formula One long enough knows that the most dangerous rivalries don't start with crashes. They start with silences. With body language. With slow-building shifts in momentum that start in the media room and end on track. Leclerc is watching his position, his emotional monopoly over Ferrari, begin to erode, not through failure, but through the gravitational pull of a teammate who exists as a global phenomenon. For Ferrari's leadership, the challenge is both strategic and psychological. How do you manage a situation where your homegrown hero is being overshadowed, not by performance, but by presence? How do you protect the morale of a driver who has given you everything, while still leveraging the massive global influence of the most recognizable figure in motorsport? How do you keep both men motivated, committed, and aligned, when one is being treated as the face of a team, and the other as the face of the sport itself? It's a powder keg. And it's being lit not by conflict, but by subtlety, by contrast, by the visible, undeniable truth that Hamilton commands the world's attention in ways no current driver can match. He's on billboards, keynote stages, documentary panels, product launches, sustainability boards, and advisory councils. His reach goes beyond pole positions. His story resonates beyond the racetrack. And while Leclerc remains deeply beloved by the fans, by the tifosi, by the heart of Formula One, there's a creeping sense that for the first time, his spotlight is being dimmed, not by mistake, but by design. And that is where the psychological battle begins. Because Leclerc has fought for everything. He's endured the long winters of Ferrari's inconsistency. He's remained publicly supportive through political upheaval, through technical regression, through championship collapses. And now, just as the team finally seemed on the verge of becoming competitive, he finds himself forced to share the spotlight with a teammate whose brand power is rewriting the rules of engagement. It's a test that goes beyond racing. It's a test of identity, of legacy, of emotional resilience. Leclerc isn't just racing Hamilton for position anymore. He's racing him for relevance, for space, for control of the narrative inside the most emotionally charged team in the sport. And as the season wears on, as each Grand Prix adds pressure, each interview adds tension, each podium finish adds stakes, that fight will only intensify. There will be no press release acknowledging it. No statement from team management. But in the background, it's already begun. A power struggle wrapped in silence, racing helmets, and sponsorship deals. And no matter what happens on the track, it may be the defining battle of Ferrari's season, and possibly of Leclerc's career. The SF25 continues to be a riddle Ferrari has yet to solve, a car born of ambition, developed in wind tunnels with the precision of aerospace engineering, refined through thousands of hours of data analysis and feedback loops, and yet, still prone to inconsistency, vulnerability, and disappointment. It dazzles one weekend with sharp front-end grip and enough cornering speed to make Red Bull glance twice in their mirrors, and then fades the next under the weight of tire degradation, inexplicable balance shifts, and questionable pit wall decisions that leave fans and analysts scratching their heads. This isn't merely about pace. It's about trust. About belief in a package that's supposed to evolve into a contender, but too often collapses under pressure, in the moments that matter most. Amidst this chaos stands Lewis Hamilton, not only one of the most successful drivers in Formula One history, but now also one of the most scrutinized athletes on the planet, with every move dissected not just for sporting impact, but for cultural significance. As of now, not a single podium has arrived in his 2025 campaign. Not one bottle of champagne. Not one step onto the rostrum to salute the tifosi who dreamed of seeing him in scarlet glory. And yet, in the eyes of the commercial world, that hasn't diminished his value one bit. Because for them, Hamilton isn't just a driver chasing points. He is the product. The ambassador. The magnet that draws eyes, clicks, engagement, and investment at a scale that transcends qualifying deltas and DRS zones. Perplexity AI, the headline sponsor that joined forces with Hamilton in this new era, didn't ink its multi-million-dollar deal because they expected immediate pole positions or a title-winning car. They aligned with him because his name means something far beyond a stopwatch reading. To them, and to many of the global brands now entering the sport, Hamilton represents a convergence of technology, storytelling, purpose, and influence. He is a living interface between racing tradition and the future of innovation. In every camera flash, every live stream, every press conference backdrop, he brings visibility, relevance, and cultural capital to whatever team he races for. And that's precisely where Ferrari finds itself entering territory it has never had to navigate before. This is not just about performance. This is about identity. About what it means when your driver, the man hired to represent your legacy, becomes bigger than the badge itself. When fans in Brazil, South Africa, California, and Tokyo don't say, Ferrari's driver, but rather Hamilton, who happens to be in a Ferrari. The center of gravity begins to shift. The brand is no longer the gravitational force. The man is. And that dynamic, while thrilling for sponsors and global media, is now raising difficult questions inside the halls of Maranello, where legacy has always come before personality, and the Scuderia has always viewed drivers as tools of the mission, not the mission itself. Internally, some within Ferrari's traditionalist circles are reportedly uneasy with the pace of transformation Hamilton is bringing with him. The sponsorship activations, the social justice messaging, the fashion, the partnerships with forward-thinking tech companies. These are elements not typically associated with the cloistered heritage-heavy image of Ferrari. Yet they are becoming unavoidable. Because every time Hamilton speaks, people listen. Every time he posts, it trends. Every time he walks through the paddock, the cameras follow. The gravitational field has changed, and Ferrari is no longer the sole star in its own galaxy. What happens when the driver becomes the institution? When board members from multinational sponsors call Maranello not to inquire about chassis updates or CFD progress, but to ask whether Lewis will be attending an event in Dubai or a summit in Silicon Valley? What happens when internal engineering meetings are interrupted not by technical concerns, but by marketing executives requesting content schedules and branding access for digital campaigns? These are no longer hypotheticals. They are the day-to-day complexities of Ferrari's new reality. And while the engineers are focused on simulations, setup adjustments, and trying to bring the next floor upgrade in time for the Austrian Grand Prix, the communications department is fielding endless calls from fashion labels, sustainability think tanks, and entertainment conglomerates who want a piece of Hamilton's orbit. For decades, Ferrari has dictated the terms of engagement with its drivers. Now it finds itself having to adjust, to shift its posture, to share the spotlight, to coexist with a global brand that resides not in Maranello, but in the mind of a man who has raced his way into cultural immortality. For the fans, this is a thrilling chapter. For the younger generation, for the dreamers, for those who see Formula One not only as a technical contest but as a narrative of human ambition, resilience, and global influence, this is what evolution looks like. Hamilton isn't just a racer. He is a creator of moments, a builder of legacy, a symbol of transcendence. He has crafted a space where the track is only part of the story. The rest unfolds in interviews, on red carpets, in innovation panels, and behind the scenes where new paradigms of sport and culture are being shaped. This transformation, this Hamilton effect, means that Ferrari is no longer just managing a team. They're managing a phenomenon. And that phenomenon isn't going to slow down just because the SF25 is struggling with mid-corner oversteer or because tire temperatures weren't optimal in Q3. That's the old lens. The new lens sees every race weekend not just as a sporting event, but as a global broadcast platform. A canvas. A catalyst. The balance within Ferrari is now more delicate than ever. While some urge the team to embrace this hybrid identity, to leverage Hamilton's reach and reinvent what Ferrari can mean in the 21st century, others are clinging to a purist vision, one that believes the badge must always come first, no matter who wears the overalls. It's a cultural crossroads, and the decisions made in the next 6 months may determine not just whether Hamilton finishes this season in contention, but whether Ferrari itself can remain relevant in a rapidly transforming sporting landscape. Because whether or not the SF25 delivers a race win this season, the real story isn't just being written in laps and lap times. It's being written in boardrooms, on screens, in headlines, in the minds of a generation that doesn't remember Schumacher's dominance but sees Hamilton as a living symbol of purpose-driven excellence. For Ferrari, adapting to that vision may be the only way forward. And for Hamilton, it's no longer just about crossing the finish line first. It's about designing what the finish line even means.